Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Rival Recon here on Anfield Index Pro. And after a disappointing start to the season, the Reds bounced back in emphatic style from defeat at Old Trafford with a 9-0 annihilation of Bournemouth at Anfield on Saturday afternoon. With Klopp's side seemingly having rediscovered some of their famed intensity, on this episode we'll be looking ahead to whether they can pick up another win at home as Newcastle arrive at Anfield on Wednesday evening. And joining me on the pod to discuss the evolution that's well underway up at St James's Park, I'm delighted to welcome on football writer and author Dave Black. Welcome, Dave.
Hello, Harry. How are you doing?
Not bad. Yeah, not bad. We're recording this the evening after Liverpool scored 9 goals. Just a 9. I mean, obviously no moral victory there in failing to score 10 once you've got past 8. But I think, it's... I think given some of the difficult start to the season and sort of the immediate pressure of framing everything by what City are doing, I think 9 goals felt like a decent tonic. I think, well, perhaps not for Scott Parker or any Bournemouth fans, but yeah, certainly for some Liverpool fans who've been a bit troubled. So yeah, I'd say that's making things go down a little bit easier this evening, Dave. But rather than talk about Liverpool, what I really want to get into, and sort of why I'm glad that you've joined me, is to sort of understand the journey. And sometimes I use that word with different clubs, and you think, well, how complex is this journey we're really talking about? But with Newcastle, it feels like there's been a lot of change over the past year or so, if not longer. And I just want to ask you just to cast your mind back to the end of last season. Obviously, the second half of the season, from January onwards, was a much more positive outlook for how Newcastle performed. Just wanted to ask you, by the time you got to the end of the season, how are you feeling about how the season had unfolded and sort of the progress that the side was making?
It was night and day from where we were sort of pre-January. As Eddie Howe put more of a stamp on the team, we just became, you saw week by week, obviously it helped getting new players in January, but by the end of the season, you almost didn't want the season to end because I think our last home game, we absolutely battered Arsenal. It finished 2-0, but it could have been 6 and they couldn't have any complaints, and you just thought, this is the sort of the culmination of probably 6 to 7 months of real hard work coming to fruition. And for the first time in a long time, we came into the new season absolutely, buzzing for the season ahead, which hasn't been the case for a long time, for obvious reasons, which we'll probably come on to. But it's obviously quite strange for us, having to come back from season upon season of Bruce or Pardew or whoever we've had as manager over the last 13 or 14 years. So it's a really nice change.
Yeah, no, certainly. I think come on to talk about Eddie Howe, but I also think 6 wins out of the last 10 games, I think it was, in the Premier League. And as you mentioned, obviously that, as a neutral, very fun, and as someone who has, I think I'm mentioning it a lot on this pod now, grew up in North London and had a lot of Arsenal supporting family members, and they really did sort of inflate themselves last season a little bit. That 2-0 was, I think that's the quietest I've heard I've seen the WhatsApp chat for the majority of last season, certainly. So it's quite loud now, as you'd imagine. But in terms of the players who really made that influence in the second half of the season, allowed Eddie Howe to employ more of the tactics that were moulding the team into the sort of the way in which he wanted it to look. Obviously, there's the headliners, Bruno Guimaraes coming in and having a real big impact. But who are some of the other names that you think deserve sort of mentioning, even if there's a couple perhaps that have gone below the radar?
Well, yes, I mean, yes, as you said, there, he's too good for us. As it stands, as a mid-table club, it's we've got to match his ambitions over the coming seasons to make sure he sticks around because he's far too good for a mid-table Premier League club. But
and what kind of player is he as well, actually, Dave? Just in terms of, I think people have a perception of the kind of player that he is, but just if you don't mind, just talking a little bit about sort of what you get with Bruno Guimaraes.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's in modern speaking, he's a 6 or an 8. He can create, but he can also put himself about, put his foot in. At the minute, he's playing in front of the back four, kind of. It's usually the role John Joe Shelby plays, but he's got a pretty severe hamstring injury, so Bruno's having to play sort of the deeper line role, if you like. But that's what we like about him. He can do absolutely everything, and you don't always get that from players who come to Premier League from abroad. You might get your number 10 types who they'll only attack; they don't necessarily do the ugly side of the game. He just does everything really well. When I spoke to Henry in the pre-season, I compared him to Thiago in terms of you look at him and he just looks like a great footballer. He is a cut above everything else we've got. So he and Trippier, who also arrived in January, are sort of obvious sort of winners, if you like, where they've always played for and often played for good or title contending teams, and it just rubs off on the rest of the squad to have people like that around them. Those two are the big two who came in January. But everything Eddie Howe touched in January turned to gold. Like even Dan Burn, who was always kind of like he was an okay centre half or even a left back for Brighton, but he came in and played centre half for us, and we just became this organised defensive unit, which I haven't seen for a number of years. Probably noticed like a lot of our wins were quite tight, maybe 1-0 or 2-1s, and the improvement in the defence was largely down to him.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that certainly comes across when you're looking at the score lines of these games. I mean, with a couple of exceptions there, based on some of the top 6 teams and ones who are really purring towards the end of the season. I mean, some of those results are much more narrow than they were certainly sort of in seasons beforehand. Certainly at the start of the season was certainly Liverpool's experience. I remember when we went up to St James's Park, it was a much tougher sort of fixture to navigate than perhaps it has been in previous seasons. And I'm just interested, you mentioned there some of the organisation that came in and how it's been a while since you've seen that, and some of the different players you highlighted. And but when everything clicks, and maybe you're seeing it a little bit more this season, or will see it some more this season, but when everything clicks and goes the way in which you think he would like it to go, what does an Eddie Howe sort of Newcastle team actually look like? And I guess, I mean, people have an idea in their head of the football that he played at Bournemouth when it first came up to the Premier League, and it was quite expansive, quite end-to-end. They'd best response to sort of going behind would just be attacking, of course, and just I get the feeling he has evolved as a manager. Obviously, he's dealing with different players, different set of circumstances, different resources that are available to him. But yeah, when everything clicks, what did that sort of look like in terms of how he'd line the team up?
So I think we're only really starting to say that now after he's had the full pre-season. As a sort of side note, our real uplift in form came after we had a sort of a 2-week winter break where we probably for the first time since he took over, I think we must have been out of a cup or something, and he took us away to some warm weather training, and the 2 weeks after while we were away we came back, and that was when our form turned around. Obviously the new players came in as well, but I don't think it's a coincidence that when he had a couple of weeks, or in this case pre-season, to work with the players to start to play the system a bit better.
Actual tactical work, right? Yes, actually.
Exactly, which we haven't had for certainly the Bruce era. But to answer your question, really, what he wants to do is play aggressive pressing, push up the field, which isn't always brilliant. If you push up, as you know, as you play probably the highest line in the league, you've got to press, and you've got to press well, or else there's a lot of space in behind, which is where we've been caught out against some of the better teams. But I think what we saw against Man City last weekend was as well as we've played for a number of years, not just in the Howe era, but for a number of years, full stop. And it was a shame we didn't get the win in the end, but that was almost the blueprint of what he wants to be like. He said himself he doesn't want to sit with 11 behind the ball against anybody and try and soak up the pressure and just cling on for near death, all that kind of stuff, which you don't blame a lot of managers for trying against the likes of Man City and yourselves, because And look at Bournemouth today, obviously, they got hammered, which can happen to teams who maybe don't set themselves up correctly. But he himself said he wants to get on the front foot against everybody. All right, there'll be some risks to take in those sorts of games, but we gave City as good as they gave us, I think, last weekend. We obviously got carved open a few times, but we also made a number of chances ourselves on the counter attack. So that's what he wants, which for us as a fan is it's great to hear. We had the polar opposite of that really under Rafa Benitez, which I think was largely down to budget constraints. He's never been the most expansive manager, but he gave us a structured team and we support him to the hills. It doesn't have to be attacking football; it has to be football that works and has everyone bought into it. So it's not necessarily we demand front foot football, but if you've got a manager like Eddie who wants to do it and is prepared to implement it, then all the better.
Yeah, no, I think that's always come across when I've spoken to journalists who've been covering Newcastle for a long time in terms of what what supporters. It's not what supporters are demanding; it's just what they're hoping for in terms of sort of the commitment level from the players and grinding out results in whatever sort of way was possible at the time. And I think certainly the affection for Benitez came across very, very strongly, even though he was obviously dealing in pretty difficult circumstances, as you mentioned. But Eddie Howe, different set of circumstances, different resources available to him. And when you've got players, like the likes of Alan Saint-Maximin, some of the new attacking talents who've come into the club recently as well, that we'll come on to talk about. Even sort of Joe Linton reinventing himself as this sort of dynamic defensive midfielder, which I just would never have seen that, which is been really fascinating to see sort of how he's managed to sort of stamp himself into the side from a different position. I think it would almost be a waste if you weren't trying to give as good as you get. And you mentioned that City game, and it was very refreshing actually in terms of, I think, City and Liverpool, as you mentioned, very high lines, and I think that was Carragher after the United game was saying something along the lines of, I don't see City, dealing with these 1v1s as much as Liverpool, and I think that's probably the obvious difference between the sides is the quality of the midfields that they have there, right? And City's midfield, unsurprisingly, very good at keeping the ball, and you can't counter attack on the side when you don't have the ball. But I thought Newcastle, really good example there of, if you do, set yourself up in a disciplined way and attack with purpose and really go, down the throats almost of City at times. Lo and behold, once you do get past their press, not many people like to deal with Alan Saint-Maximin running at them. There's not many centre backs in the league fancy that, even if they are great at 1v1 sort of situations. So, I thought it was really. I was hoping it would be a blueprint for the rest of the league, and I think Palace had a go today before the Norwegian woke up. But what I wanted to ask as well was, but you got to end the season. Obviously, I think there's a positive, feel good factor around the club and the direction in which they were going in. And I've been interested in the way in which I think, given the obvious huge resources that are now behind the club, we've seen in the past teams that suddenly have that sort of backing go out and marquee signings, perhaps not really compatible with the style of play, but just big names, things like that. And Newcastle, I've quite enjoyed that they seem to have gone out of their way not to do that really, and to try and build things in a bit more of a considered fashion. You mentioned Guimaraes. You think he's too good for you at the moment. There's a couple other players who've come from Champions League background or European background as well, but that's what you're building towards, obviously. So, but I don't think you can be accused of going out and purchasing a Robinho, for example. That's what he did in the early days. But when you got to the end of the season, where were the positions in the squad that you thought, okay, these are the really obvious ones that we need to prioritise this summer?
Well, the big one for me probably still hasn't been filled, which is sort of a right-sided attacker or a winger, if you like. We've been playing Almiron there, who's kind of hit and miss. Grafts hard, good worker, but not great with end product. He obviously scored on Sunday with his thigh, which, all right, we'll give him, but
they all count,
they all count. But he also missed one from
10
yards. So that's kind of what you get with him. And then you've got like Ryan Fraser and Jacob Murphy, who, again, they work-ish. They're not Premier League quality really. Ryan Fraser has been, but he hasn't really been fit consistently for a long time. And Jacob Murphy probably a top-end championship kind of player for me. So I'd still like to see someone come in there. Now, obviously, we've signed Isaac, or how are you going to say it this week? Very interested to see if he's going to be able to play with Wilson, or whether they're going to sort of rotate, or whether one of them can play a little bit wider. Not really sure yet, but I guess we'll find out. Because we'd spent some money in January, we'd got Dan Burn. I think there was still a feeling that we needed a better centre half, if you like. I mean, Burn again is good, but he probably has a ceiling of where he is now. I can't imagine he's going to get an awful lot better at his age. And his partner's been Fabian Schär, who's again good, but has his flaws, and also a little bit injury prone. So I was delighted when we got Sven Botman in, obviously very highly rated from France, and will play for Holland for many years to come, probably alongside Van Dijk at some point. So very happy to get him in. Obviously we made Target permanent, which was a no-brainer at that price for a left back, who just knows the system and plays already. I don't think many people would have said goalkeeper, but we've gone and got Nick Pope, and again, I like Dubravka, but seeing someone like Pope who's just another level up, which again, maybe that's why I'm sitting here in Eddie Howe's in the manager's seat, because I'd have stuck with Dubravka, but he saw a bargain in Pope really, and he's made a big difference already in the 3 or 4 games we've had so far. I would like a proper out and out sort of anchor man. As I said earlier, Jonjo Shelby's been playing there, which is great when you're in possession. Maybe not so good when you haven't got the ball. If we went in an away game on Wednesday, like against yourselves, I would love to have someone in there who could look after Bruno and look after Joe Linden as well, and just have someone actually covering the back four and not just able to spray a few passes about. Hasn't even been that many rumours of someone like that coming in, to be honest. So I'm not sure how sees it that way, but that would be my pick if I had to pick someone to go into and buy.
So does Guimaraes not really do much of that screening work? Does it?
Well, he has. As I say, he does everything quite well. But I just feel he's better in again using modern terms, like sort of the 8th position. Like if we had him further forward, being able to supply Wilson and St. Max and whoever else, that would be more beneficial. Now as it is, he'll do the 6 rule. That's absolutely fine. But I just feel like it's a little bit of a waste to have him sort of stuck in back there. Joe Linton again isn't an out and out defensive mid. He's just a destroyer, but he's also quite a good ball carrier as well.
Yes. Yeah.
He obviously got all the physical attributes to play in there, a bit box to box almost. But you wouldn't sit him in front of the back four and say, be Claude Makelele. It's not going to happen. So that would be the one position that we don't really have. And maybe football's moved on a bit from the Makelele kind of days. You don't get many midfielders now who just sit and don't do an awful lot else. But we don't really have a hatchet man in there, which as an option I'd quite like.
Yeah, no, I think I know what you mean. I think it's composition of midfields has been it's been a regular chat amongst plenty of guests I've had, certainly plenty of Liverpool supporters in recent weeks as well. And just looking at the age profile of those signings as well, right? I think Isaac 22, Botman 22. Even Target is like 26, perhaps in his peak years. But I think there's a clear pattern there of trying to identify targets that you can build with over time, right? As opposed to maybe in certain areas you're purchasing players who are closer to their peak, or some of the experience heads like you've done with Trippier, which I think has been a real great signing. And I think I've always felt he was an underrated player, to be honest. I feel like hasn't got really enough credit for doing what he did in Spain, going over to Atleti and winning a title with them, which is no easy feat, and satisfying the defensive requirements of Diego Simeone is definitely not a piece of cake, right? So he's turned into a real leader for you, hasn't he?
He has. No, he's actually joked the other day that he might be the best player or one of the best players to play for us in my lifetime. Like, that's how highly I rate him. You don't often say about a right back. It's a bit of a position where, obviously, the likes of Trent and Reece James aside, they don't traditionally get an awful lot of credit. But everything he does he's just a very classy player. And obviously, his set pieces are worth a number of goals. I think this week alone, he's probably supplied three goals for us. So I couldn't be happy to have him, and he's obviously the captain at the minute. Not officially, but with Lascelles kind of being out of favour. Like I said earlier, Trippier he strikes me as a winner. Obviously, as you say, went to Spain, has the experience of winning La Liga over there. I think it just rubs off on the rest of the squad. I think they just would listen to someone like that, as opposed to, I mean, with all respect to Lascelles, hasn't achieved an awful lot in the game, but he's a good voice around the dressing room.
No, yeah, I was sort of struck by that interview with St. Maximin after the City game. Just the rapport between the players was just very interesting to me, in terms of there was like Maximin going out of his way to sort of thank Trippier for the encouragement and for some of the tips, the guidance, and then Trippier going out of his way to sort of no you, and sort of volleying back with the praise. And if you can get everything, if you can put everything together, mate, you'll be at the very top.
Yeah.
I thought it just spoke volumes to sort of the group that you have at the moment. Seems to be in a really good place.
Yeah, I mean, Trippier, you may remember he got injured quite early on when he joined us. He started really well for us. I think he broke a metatarsal or a foot or something. Anyway, he was out for most of the remainder of the season from about February onwards. But he was still travelling to away games and stuff with the squad, and that allowed him to bed in and allowed him to sort of pass on his wisdom, whatever you want to call it, to his, the rest of the players. And I thought that was, for a player who's done it all really in the game, to still have that enthusiasm to travel to, I don't know, wherever it was on away days, and be part of a squad which he's only actually been a part of for a matter of weeks. I thought, as you say, that spoke volumes about the character of who would signed.
Well, in terms of Isak as well, I mean, it's obviously a big signing, 6-year deal. He's a highly rated young striker. I'm just interested in sort of, based on what you know of him as well. Is he sort of the profile of striker you were expecting the club to target, in terms of sort of the kind of striker you think would fit an Eddie Howe system, will sort of complement the players you already have?
I think he would. Yeah, everything we've done has been pretty meticulous in terms of what Howe's done and whoever's been involved with the recruitment. I mean, obviously Dan Ashworth's come in now. He wasn't here in January, so he can't get the credit for the January signings, but. We don't seem to be just signing, as you mentioned earlier, like a Robinho type who, he's available, let's just go and get him because he's a big name and whatever else. We seem to be picking and choosing who we get. I was quite noticeable on one of the welcome videos with Isaac when he was walking around the training ground. Emil Kraft, who you'll know for international duty, I went up to speak to them both, and he said, "Oh, you should hear what Emil's been saying about you." So it just makes you wonder, he must have done his homework before he signed him. Spoke to, obviously, people who've played with him. And as you mentioned, he's young. Like a lot of our signings have been. He's going to be around for a number of years, all being well. He's got a big reputation as I hate to say the phrase, but as a wonder kid, if you like, who has all the tools to go on and become, one of the best players in the league. It's up to us really to make sure he gets there. As I mentioned earlier, I don't really know what the plan is. Where are we going to switch to a sort of a two up front? Can he play wide? Can he play with Wilson? I'm not 100% sure on that. Wilson's got a history of injuries, unfortunately, and Chris Wood is okay, but he's a totally different type of striker, and it does affect the way we play when we have to play with Chris Wood instead. So he's more of a Wilson type, which is good for us. So I'm really excited to see how he beds in. Yeah,
no, I think he's obviously primarily played as a lone striker, and I think based on how they set up, it was more of a 4-2-3-1. So it's not a million miles away from the 4-3-3 that Eddie Howe plays. And I think like most young sort of modern strikers, he's very much one that sort of presses from the front as well, which you imagine was sort of an attraction to Eddie Howe, sort of bringing him in as well. And he's an interesting looking striker as well, because he's obviously he's tall, not altogether, doesn't necessarily look like he's particularly sort of physical or strong, but I think again could be deceptive in the way in which, for example, Fabinho in our team doesn't look like he's particularly sort of big or strong, but has that sort of deceptive Brazilian sort of strength around him. And it's also sort of, from what I've seen anyway, sort of very technically proficient as well. I've seen a bunch of very nice or dinked finishes, which is always, you always like to see that from strikers as well.
Yeah, you're right. I hope because of his size, we don't end up just going route one to him, which isn't really the Eddie Howe way. But sometimes I think players, when they're maybe under pressure in a game, will just start going route one. He doesn't strike me as being that type of striker. So hopefully we don't fall in that trap. But he's got all the tools you'd want for someone to succeed in the Premier League. From what I've seen of him, like yourself, I haven't scouted him intensely, but from what I've seen, I like him.
No, I think it's sort of very excited to see how he does. To be honest, I've been a fan for a while, and in terms of moving on to this season, then and how what you've made of the start. I mean, we've sort of spoken about the City game. It's obviously a 3-3 attracts the attention, but I mean, what have you made of your start to the season? That win over Nottingham Forest, sort of the opening game, and then a draw against a Brighton side that we know playing very well at the moment, and sort of a very difficult proposition to deal with. And then, of course, that sort of real competitive draw against a Man City side that is again. Thanks. Every point helps with these guys. I really do appreciate anybody has a go, to be honest. But I thought that really showed sort of, that change of intent there, not just looking to stay in the game, looking to really impose yourself on that game regardless of the opposition. I mean, what have you made of the start to the season? Have there been any real noticeable trends that you've seen, any changes from last season that have been particularly apparent?
I was at the start of the season. I was a little bit, I wouldn't say negative, but I was happy just to push for top half finish. I wasn't one of these who thought we need to demand European players, whatever, just yet. It's a slow build for me. So we played Nottingham Forest, newly promoted, lots of new signs and stuff. I thought it was a really good time to play them, so I wasn't that surprised to beat them. Our home form has been exceptional since January anyway. I think there's only yourselves and I think Cambridge actually who've beaten us since January. But so I wasn't that worried about Nottingham Forest. Brighton, to be fair, battered us, and it hadn't been for Pope, we'd have lost that game. So going into Man City, I was thinking, well, we've kind of beaten a newly promoted team, and then kind of clung on a little bit for a point against a very decent Brighton team. Don't get us wrong. So really, the Man City game, for all it's a little bit of a free hit. To come out of that game being disappointed with a draw, having been 3-1 up, it's the first time I've really thought, what if with a couple of additions we could actually really push that top 7, because the way the league started, there's obviously it's only 4 games old in some cases, but it's been some very strange results, and some teams like, let's say, West Ham, who have been up in the top 6, 7 in the last few seasons, and we look quite well equipped to get a bit of momentum going. So it's the first time I've really thought, wow, we actually have moved up a couple of levels here. But it's a very small sample size so far. The most notable thing is that, as I said earlier, we've really been able to implement more of the attacking side of Howe's philosophy. Last season, he tightened us up, bolted the doors a little bit, and we say we'd beat, say, like Crystal Palace, we'd beat them at home 1-0. And that was kind of our sort of blueprint towards the last season. Palace and Wolves and a couple of other teams we nudged past. I imagine when we play those fixtures this season, we'll be a lot more on the front foot. So I'm looking forward to seeing if we can actually get the results in those games and sort of progressively get more attacking against sides we should beat. I was surprised we went as helpful as we did against Man City for obvious reasons, but if that's how he wants to play it, then that's absolutely fine with me. If we get results like that where we really went for it. Against yourselves, I imagine he'll try and do the same thing again. I mean, as you said earlier, you saw when teams get good results against other teams, it gets noted, and the way Crystal Palace play against yourselves, I can see us doing something similar. With we've got players like St Max and, well, obviously won't be Wilson, presumably Isaac will play, who have got the pace to get behind that high line, and I think we'll have a go at you. I don't think we'll win. Of course I don't, because we haven't won at Anfield. I think we've won once in my lifetime at Anfield, so I'm not expecting us to go and get a result. But I think we'll play to win, and what will be will be.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be a tricky game, to be honest. I think, as you say, you've got the players there to adopt that tactic. Being defensively solid, looking to counter, cleverly. I think there are players there who can cause us issues. And given how we started the season, obviously today was a nice tonic, like I mentioned, in terms of sort of like the attack functioning clearly, and but just all round looking a bit more assured. So we'll see if that actually translates into the next game as well. But in terms of you sort of touched upon it a little bit there, but just as we come to sort of wrap up, I mean, what are your expectations for the season now? I mean, and it sounds like they've shifted a little bit from where they were at the opening game. We're only 3 games in, but it sounds like things have shifted. And I think a 3-3 against last season's champions. It's understandable to see how that would have you thinking of different things.
Yeah, well, so at the start of the season, I'd been happy to finish in the top half and have a run in the cups, which would do for me, absolutely. But having seen us go toe-to-toe with Man City, I just feel like maybe this is a good time to actually go for it, because it's going to be a strange season with the World Cup sort of stopping things halfway through. We probably won't have that many players go, which may work in our favour. Again, I think Howe's planning to take us away for a few weeks for warm weather training during November, December time, which has worked in the past. So I think a lot of the other teams will be decimated by people going away, and how long it's going to take them to get back into first team action, etc., etc. So whilst I'm not expecting a top 4 push, I think if you can keep some momentum going, we could find ourselves around 7th, 8th come that winter break, and that gives you a decent platform to build on. I wouldn't be disappointed if we didn't finish the top 7. Like I say, I'm looking at the longer term picture for where we're going as a club. But with 3 or 4 days to go in the transfer window, who knows what might happen? I mean, I didn't really expect us to get, and I never expect to spend 60 million on a player, but we just have. Having been told for weeks that there's only 40 million in the coffers, and anyone we get, you might get one player, you might get a loan, and then almost out of nowhere, we go and sign someone for 60 million. We have won the football lottery. I'm under no illusions on that. I know financial fair play obviously play a factor in who we go and buy, but I'm not going to pretend to understand that. So whoever we do sign over the next few days, let's just wait and see. But I'm expecting maybe 1 or 2 additions. If we get them in, I think we'll be pushing the top 8. And whether it's more than that or not, I wouldn't like to say, but that would be where I'm heading at the minute. Yeah,
no, I think it's. I'm expecting it to be sort of a busy into the window. I'm hoping it's going to be a busier into the window for Liverpool as well. I think it's been an interesting week in actually hearing a manager admit, even if it was a bit tongue in cheek, that he may have got it wrong in terms of the midfield. Has had many Liverpool fans sort of thinking about all the possibilities, and I think it's probably going to be a loan, to be honest. But yeah, we'll see who comes through the door for all the clubs. But I think it makes perfect sense there around your expectations, and I think with the resources behind the club, and actually I think that point around not having players or not having too many players who are going away to the World Cup, I think that time, that tactical work, that warm weather training, I think it's going to be invaluable, to be honest. I think it's one of the things I'm clinging my hopes on in that Mo Salah and a couple other players are not going anywhere. So I'm hoping that when everyone else comes back knackered, Mo is going to be reaping the benefits of that. So it's definitely something I'm clinging to. But anyway, just want to thank you again for coming onto the show, David. And it's been sort of great to have your insight into. Yeah, I think we can call it a journey. It is a journey. Lots of things are changing, as you mentioned. It's that £60 million strikers coming in. It's a different world now for Newcastle. Thinking even going back to that 2 years ago, it's just a world away. Even sort of last season, as you mentioned, the first half feels a world away from that at this stage as well. So really appreciate you coming on and sort of sharing all your insight into sort of the world of Newcastle.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for asking me on.
No, of course. And to all those listeners who've been tuning into Rival Recon, we are about to enter into that phase of the season which allegedly Liverpool sort of like in terms of sort of the rhythm, just the grind of things where it's 2 games a week, and then also European fixtures come in as well, and then it sort of really gets into sort of heavy rhythm. I'd briefly forgotten about that over the past couple of days as well, so I'm going to have to sort of do my mini pre-season and get ready for that as well. And there'll be another pod just on that topic. There'll be another pod coming up ahead of the weekend's Merseyside derby. Of course, Everton not looking great at the moment, not looking too expansive, and rumours about the starlet Gordon, of course, still under interest from Chelsea. Dele Alli's obviously moved over to Besiktas. It's a remarkable decline in his career as well. So there'll be a podcast ahead of the Merseyside derby to tune into next week as well. But in the meantime, do encourage you to check out all the other podcasts coming out at Anfield Index Pro. I'm sure there'll be plenty of sort of jubilant ones after today's sort of 9-0 win over Bournemouth. It's pretty hard not to be enamoured with that. So, but between now and then, do tune into all those different podcasts. But we'll be back again next week with another episode ahead of that Merseyside derby.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index, and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.